Hello and welcome. My name is Hannes Rothe. I'm an assistant professor at Freie Universität Berlin. I'm particularly working on the field on tech entrepreneurship. And today I would like to talk with you about entrepreneurial ecosystems and the role of universities within those ecosystems. When we refer to how children are raised up, we regularly refer to the following terminology. We regularly say it takes a village to raise a child. And what we mean is that it's not only the parents who have a say in how a child is raised up, but it's regularly also the school teachers, the teachers in kindergarten, the friends and family that everybody comes together and raises the child, as well as some maybe strangers that we meet on the street, as maybe someone is crossing the street on a red light. This is going to teach something to our children. When we talk about startups, what we might want to acknowledge is that there are barely any startups that grow on green fields out there. Most of them grow within ecosystems. So it takes an ecosystem to grow a venture. But what is that exactly, this kind of ecosystem? Well, an ecosystem is a term that is originated in biology and has been used multiple times in management and economic literature. A biological ecosystem is fairly easy to understand for us. Well, it might be a complex set of relationships, but it is among the living resources, habitats and residents, in a particular area. So it's delimited by a particular region. So we might think about this kind of a marine environment, right? A coral reef, for instance, where you can see, okay, there are different plants, fish, and there are some fish that eat other fish, and this other fish is then again eaten by someone else. But still, even though everything and everybody eats everybody, the entire ecosystem is kept in an equilibrium state. So somehow, at least we hope that, this kind of ecosystem prevails and sustains. That's the functional goal of this ecosystem, to sustain, to survive. So everybody is working towards this goal, even though they follow their own goals. We in management, we use this terminology now very, very often. And when we talk about entrepreneurial ecosystems or startup ecosystems, it becomes more than just a metaphor. I would want to understand today entrepreneurial ecosystems as, again, complex structures of relationships, but between social, political, and economic actors. So there might be investors being interested in taking equity positions in a venture, or there might be university having an interest of a venture using one of their patents. Together these actors, and this is what makes startup ecosystems so special, together everybody is working towards one aim. And this aim is supporting innovative, scale-oriented startups. So young companies that are able to grow at a vast speed and a high pace. So again, today I want to understand really how these ecosystems work and what is the role of universities here. So let's see what these ecosystems are actually doing. So an ecosystem, you can understand that as an ecosystem as a provider of access to resources to startups. So a startup can go in their ecosystem and use a couple of resources that are rightly available there. And those can be used by this small company as an opportunity. So maybe there is a nice new customer that they stumbled upon on the street or in a fair, and they had an interesting idea how to solve one of the problems of these customers. And what entrepreneurs or young ventures regularly doing then is they do two things. They leverage the spatial affordances, so the potential that the space, the ecosystem around them has, with the technology affordances, with the potential that a particular technology has. And today I would like to really focus on these both parts and look at universities and how they both influence those two factors. So when we talk about a startup, as I said, startups are not growing on a green field. Regularly, it needs also not only a single founder, but a multitude of founders. You need a team. And you not only need to team up within your own organization, but you need maybe a venture capitalist or maybe a business angel. There might be a state sponsor giving some funding, and there might be partners such as pointed out here, maybe Google or some B2B clients that you partner with to get some initial product done or initial prototype. And regularly, you would also need some kind of consumers or customers that you are thinking of. And it very often starts within your own ecosystem. There you might find your partners. There you might find your customers. And this is what I'm going to refer to as spatial affordances. So let's look at both of these kind of spatial affordances and technology affordances. And we're going to start talking about technology affordances. As I said at the very beginning, I'm going to focus particularly on healthcare here. So when we talk about affordances, an affordance is a human perception in this case, how a technology helps them attain a particular goal. One technology can have a multitude of affordances, really depending on whose goals is this serving to. So a pen, for instance, might be a very simple technology, but has several affordances. Not all of them are actualized now, but some of them might be. I could use this as a pointing stick, like showing something somewhere. I could use this obviously to draw something or write something, always fulfilling different goals. So this kind of technology, as simple as it might be, has several affordances. And just have to think of them and have to know them. So affordances describe possibilities for action. And when we talk about entrepreneurs, when we talk about possibilities, we regularly talk about opportunities. So not only a possibility of doing something, but a positive possibility, something that I could use to leverage maybe like a new market opportunity, like creating a new way of creating value for a customer or capturing value of a customer. When we talk about technology affordances, what we might think of, maybe if we are a young venture, it might be that we know a couple of technologies, and when we stumble upon a problem, we come to the idea, why not just use the technologies I know? Maybe you are familiar with Google TensorFlow, which is a library for designing deep neural networks. And if you are, maybe you are also familiar with Amazon Web Services, which is a cloud infrastructure provider, and have other technologies rightly available, maybe such as Docker, or you are familiar with customer relationship management in Salesforce. And when you stumble upon a problem, so maybe you stumble upon the problem that the documents that your clinicians regularly provide are not easily interpretable. So maybe they need to be scanned and then somehow transformed into a format that you could work with. You might come to the idea, why not just use the technologies I know? Why not train a neural network to do the hard work for you? I'm not saying that it's going to be easy, but if you know these technologies, you will know a way on how to do this. And suddenly, solving this problem becomes an available option for you. You can configure the technologies that you know. You configure the possibilities of each of the technologies you know. You might look at the saliva of a baby from a different perspective, or at a biological sample from a different perspective, if you are aware on how to use certain technologies to maybe sequence this biological sample. Because suddenly you can transform the cell into its encoding, DNA encoding, for instance. And suddenly you are there looking at a large string data that you could now interpret. And you can interpret for multiple different ways. You could look at people's saliva, as I said before. Maybe you're going to look into health reports, or you're going to look into family relationships. Using animal data could be possible to look into the different variety of animals out there. So if you're, for instance, studying animal diversity. And the good thing and the interesting thing about biological data, and we're just right now seeing the tip of the iceberg there, is there are so many things that you could do with this data regarding each and every livestock on Earth. And here it really comes. If you are a biotechnologist and you're aware of these technologies, you might already think about the different ways you could apply it to. and you're suddenly thinking about the technology affordances. Universities have played a huge role in creating these technology affordances in two different ways. First of all, that's the obvious thing. Universities are research facilities, therefore creating new knowledge and creating new technologies. So if we talk nowadays, we tend to talk a lot about artificial intelligence or things like CRISPR. We are thinking about, okay, CRISPR-Cas is actually like is a result of a research institute that has just been nominated and won the Nobel Prize. So universities create these technologies. And it's not only that. They create the technologies that we're working at, and they train them. They train them to students, and therefore we have numerous different programs out there, like master's programs in bioinformatics or biotechnologies, even MBA programs in biotechnologies. And we have more and more nuanced training sets for more and more nuanced career alternatives, such as Masters for Data Scientists that we just introduced at FU Berlin. So you see, universities do two things, and this is not surprising, research and teaching, right? So this is what we know. This is what universities do. But looking at the technology affordance perspective, we know, okay, what they are actually doing are two things. First of all, creating a technology, like some kind of machine learning algorithm, and thinking about different ways already how to use them, because you have as a scientist, you regularly try to show what you could do it for. And then you're training people, students, PhD students, master students, and also other scientists in how to apply these technologies. So you already set them in the different affordances that are associated to technology. If I teach a student how to use a particular machine learning algorithm, for instance, to figure out how to create a predictive maintenance environment, or to create to create another recommender system, for instance, then I'm already showing the student how to use this technology and for what goal. And this is what we do. I'm going to use a couple of examples from Berlin during this speech. So let me briefly explain to you, if you've never been to Berlin. Berlin is the German capital. Hopefully that's something that is fairly notable across all of you. But Berlin is, in this sense, unique because we have a lot of different higher education institutions here. And we just formed this Berlin University Alliance between the big universities in Berlin, Freie Universität, Humboldt University, and Technical University Berlin, as well as Charité. And we alone, like we as a university alliance, we alone care for more than 110,000 students that we train and teach on new methods, technologies, but also on other areas, obviously. We are engaging in huge projects and research projects where these technologies are developed across the field, and therefore employ a lot of different researchers and professors. So if you look at this from an entrepreneurship perspective, you would already see, wow, this is interesting. So first of all, they create new knowledge here. So cutting edge knowledge, cutting edge technologies developed there, with more than 500 million annual research funding. So there must be something interesting there that is developed as technology. And then there are so many students that I could work with, right? So students that are just trained on the recent stuff. And even more, these alumni that fall out of the university, not everybody wants to leave Berlin, but maybe some of them would like to stay in Berlin. They've just been trained on the recent stuff. Maybe now they can use that in your company. And because we have a very vibrant venture scene in Berlin, many of those start working as first or second employees within these startups. As we look into who are the people that we're actually training and that we're actually engaging with in universities, I would like to point out one particular target group that have become very close to my heart in recent years. And those are postdocs, PhD students and postdocs, and early career researchers. If we look at particularly this subgroup, we would learn a couple of things. First of all, those are the spearhead when it comes to really expert knowledge in particular domains, especially in the life sciences. I've done a lot of different workshops, a lot of different courses on entrepreneurship education with all sorts of different life sciences, with all sorts of different postdocs across the domain. And what you would learn is, and here I'm borrowing a slide from a good colleague of mine, is you would learn there's an interesting trajectory along the academic career paths. Because this academic career path really has multiple critical phases where we prepare people to, and people fall out of the system. Everybody who's ever spent some time in the university knows that it's a very steep funnel, right? So particularly in the natural and life sciences, we know that many do their PhD or many do a doctoral degree, particularly in Germany. But not everybody can get a professor position because there are only a few tenured professor positions, which means many in the process, many postdocs, many PhD students fall out of the system. Those are trained on the latest technologies. Those are trained on the latest knowledge. Some of them even develop this knowledge. So those are cutting edge, and those are ripe to either start new companies or be employed in new companies. However, what particularly this subgroup regularly lacks is the awareness of these spatial affordances. And this is the second thing that universities play or the second part where the universities play a very important role. So we now know that technologies are designed, delivered, and trained within universities, university environments regularly. But universities also have particular roles when it comes to the spatial affordances of entrepreneurial ecosystems. So what potentials does the environment hold? Well, if we look at entrepreneurial ecosystems, and I'm going to use a framework by a colleague from Edinburgh. If you look at entrepreneurial ecosystems, what you regularly would look at is what resources are available within an entrepreneurial ecosystem. Does an entrepreneurial ecosystem hold for instance, a lot of early stage money for young ventures? Is it easily attainable? Or do you have a lot of experience in growing companies? Are there a lot of serial founders within the ecosystem who can share their knowledge? Are there a lot of, for instance, particularly interesting in the life sciences, do you have a lot of lab capacity, wet lab capacity? If not, maybe that's not a good thing if you want to start a biotech company. So there are a couple of resources that are particularly important. Many of those boil down to knowing someone who has access to someone. So therefore, Ben Spiegel has this view on it's not only interesting what are the resources, but also how strong are the interconnections between the people there that actually give access to these resources. You might have an ecosystem that might have a lot of different resources available, but sadly, only a few people have access to those, and you have very poor interconnections between people. The strongest ecosystems have both. A lot of resources, but also strong interlinkages between all these different actors involved. So if you are already part of an ecosystem, it would be good for you to know, where do I sit here? What is my problem? Is my problem is my problem going to be having the right links, or is my problem going to have access to the right resources? So Berlin is a good place for starting a company. Yeah, that's definitely true, right? So we have a lot of different ventures, and one particular domain that has been very strong is the healthcare domain. Berlin is not doing too well on biotech, but particularly when it comes to health tech ventures, it's very, very strong. And right now, in Berlin we see a lot of investment going on into biotech sector. Right now, for instance, lab structures are built up in huge capacities. And if we look at all these different ventures, and Berlin is particularly strong in domains such as fintech, artificial intelligence, food tech, And if we in transportation, if we look at these different domains across the globe, we would see at least a quarter of those are originated already at universities. So by founders falling out of the university system. Most of those, or many of those at least, in the healthcare domain, which is not too surprising. You can look it up yourself, startup-map.berlin. It gives a pretty good picture of that. So back again to these kind of postdoc story, to the scientists. So I said that scientists regularly are not really aware of the spatial affordances. Well, this is a problem. It's a problem that I've been working on for quite some years now. And one thing that we regularly do, and this is something that more and more universities I see are doing, is not only providing courses on entrepreneurship to students, but also to scientists. So we have been working, for instance, on a program where we actually build courses particularly for scientists. Some courses even particularly for life scientists. So there is a course that I participated in with a good partner in Cambridge, for instance, is where we had a venture creation weekend on the particular notion of genomics, which is even more narrow, more focused. And I love these focused events because there you could really go down into the details and the nitty-gritties of the most interesting cases that we have right now. As I presented here is what I find more and more important, what many universities do and should do, is creating not only like singular courses, but creating real pathways. How do I sensitize a scientist towards the kind of spatial affordances that their ecosystem provides? So that a scientist not only knows their own lab, but also knows what companies are out there that might have an interesting problem that I could solve. How can you actually approach this kind of getting to know these problems and solving these problems? So sensitization and qualification for entrepreneurship is a very important step towards this goal. And once you've done that, once you started sensitizing scientists, you can, as a university, engage with your ecosystem more and more. Most universities, particularly tech transfer offices, do that, but I think we could do much better, particularly early on. If we look at Berlin, we know that there are a lot of different actors out there. Those are mostly incubators and accelerators that we have in Berlin. This graph was created a year ago, so I'm pretty sure I have to update it right now. But it nonetheless sends the message. The message is we have a lot of incubators and accelerators, many of these particularly very focused. So especially like some of those, for instance, focused on healthcare domain or on biotech or medtech, with some of them focusing on AI, and so on and so forth. Not all of them are looking at the same stage of venture. Some of them are looking at very early ideas. I mean, we, for instance, at the university, so I'm working at the Digital Entrepreneurship Hub, for instance, we are looking particularly at very early ideas, trying to help people develop those ideas until they get into seed phase, and then maybe go to an accelerator to work on further on after that. So there are a lot of support structures that help along the entrepreneurial journey. But it's not enough to just look at the resources available. If you are at the university, and if your university provides it that way, it's actually important to link those, right? I mentioned that already. It's not enough to just have the resources. We have those. You have to link them. And I have to be sort of critical with Berlin here. I know that we have links between those different places, but I think we could do better than that. Universities can be portals to this ecosystem. If it's nicely and if it's built up in the right way, university creates the portal for scientists and students towards engaging with this ecosystem, engaging with mentors early on, providing events, university events where you actually engage with corporates out there, with startups out there, and with partners out there. And also, and this is important, and particularly if you look at the UK or in the United States, they have been particularly successful there, and we are still lagging behind here, particularly in Germany, but working intensively on following along, is working on alumni networks. So getting back these successful founders, get them back into the ecosystem, get them back engaging with the university. When I say the university links these different resources, one particular successful part of these linkages is on funding. So Germany is a grant and public funding domain, particularly when it comes to deep tech, deep science startups. So we have several different programs that we work with to provide, to help young ventures with initial state-funded capital. So they don't have to necessarily pay it back. So that they maybe get 1 year that they can really develop their technology and really get out into the market, and give them a little bit of free time to really engage deeply with the technology, which is very important, particularly for science companies. Science companies are regularly dependent on this time because they develop the new technology. They come up with the new, interesting, radical innovations that we are all looking for. And therefore they need some time. Many of those borrow their time with grant funding or with service and consultancy, all of which has its problems, all of which is difficult, but it's good that it's provided here, and grants and public funding are very important. So now that we've talked a little bit already about resources and linkages within the ecosystem, what is regularly important as well is linkages across the ecosystem, particularly when you look at later stages. So when you look at later stages, it's important, of course, to know that Berlin, for instance, is nicely connected to other ecosystems, so that you can hop off and then not only have your headquarters in Berlin, but maybe also start like a subsidiary in the United States or in Singapore. This is going to help you, like when you are engaging as an ecosystem, but also helping you, of course, as a venture. Because if you have a nice way on how to get to Singapore, and if you know people who already done that, it's easier for you. Not only going there, but maybe also getting people from there. As a university, we can also do a much better job there. So what we've been doing in recent years, particularly, we've built up a lot of connections within Berlin, heavily engaging with the other university, heavily engaging with other institutional actors, but also engaging with international institutions. So I've been working with the Postdocs to Innovators Network for a couple of years now, which is a network of University of Cambridge and Innsbruck, Paris PSL, and a couple of other universities and actors, industry actors such as Schlumberger or BP. And this network has set their goal as helping postdocs develop an entrepreneurial mindset. So we are talking all the time about how can we help postdocs be aware of their technology affordances and their spatial affordances. I hope this talk has helped you as well understand the role of universities. Thank you very much.